What's up, comrades? It's the end of the year, so obviously I've got to throw in my end of year list. We're going to be looking at the shit that slapped and the crap that shipped. Not doing anything super serious, just a review of my year in music. At a lack of a place to start, I may as well start with the meme music of the year. Death Grips came out with an album, but it seems that everyone's collectively got over Death Grips now, which is nice. It wasn't a bad album, just a boring one. Year of the Snitch, more like Year of the Snore. Kero Kero Bonito did a surprise album drop, and I surprised my friends by actually liking it. Back in 2015, Car Seat Headrest received critical acclaim for his major label debut, in which he effectively re-recorded and reworked some of his greatest hits from the BandCamp days. This year he's back at it again, plundering the archives by releasing his most critically lauded and fan-adored album. The result is an album that I like, but it's about as creatively risky as the Prodigy record that came out this year. And you can't talk memes without talking hip-hop, and by golly was there a lot to meme on in hip-hop this year.
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No, 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 no. Look at his lips.
Next up is BandCamp music. I feel like it's unfair to roast these people because just the fact that they're on BandCamp, they don't need it. So some sincere recommendations. First up, I want to recommend Sonic Wave. I know a lot of people, myself included, are completely over Vaporwave meme shit, but I do feel like this one is saying something new and having some genuine fun with it. The album is completely aware of Sonic's shaky legacy, and kind of has fun with it, and deliberately chooses to be nostalgic about the good parts of it, which I think is kind of the essence of Vaporwave. There's references to Michael Jackson and to City Pop, lots of musical Easter eggs to Sonic's OST history. If you've ever found the Sonic soundtracks to be a guilty pleasure, I recommend checking this out, because there'll be something for you. Molly Nilsson had another lovely synth pop one that you can't get on Spotify. Do you like sad, introspective, lo-fi synth pop? Because I do. I do love that. I do love it. I do love Molly Nilsson. I do love her so much. Molly, I love you, Molly. TV Girl came out with their third full-length LP, and while I think it might be their weakest overall, I do think it's the most thematically consistent. TV Girl has a beats-first attitude to songwriting, with lyrics that are often kind of playing an ironic fuckboy character. The record deals with the topics of growing older and being disillusioned with the dream of LA, which isn't new topics, but presented in such a stylish fashion, it's quite hard to dislike, although some of the songs do drag on the second half, I think. But do check it out if you like groovy, truly independent indie pop. The next guy is technically on a label, but it's like co-owned by him anyway, and there's like 5 releases on it, so I'm going to count it. This is George Clanton's Slide. George Clanton used to do Vaporwave under the pseudonym E-Spirit, and it seems like what's happened is that was more of him learning his craft and testing his production abilities, and he's taken all of that now and made much more personal songwriting songs with those styles. The production gives it kind of a dream pop feel, but from sort of a future funk vaporwave angle, which means it's dream pop like you've never heard it before. The release seems to be getting a lot of recognition and end of year lists, which is good, but if you've not heard of it, I do recommend you check it out. Now that's about it for BandCamp stuff. There were some other things I was going to mention, but on further research it turns out that they're there on record labels, so we will move on. If you build your personality around shitting on bad music, it'll have been a terrible year for you. The 1975 were adored by Pitchfork, and 21 Pilots was adored by Anthony Fantano. Luckily, Imagine Dragons came in clutch and released an absolute dogshit album that's still safe to dislike. XXXTentacion was going to start doing YouTube Let's Plays of PUBG before he died.
Oh shit! Is that who's shooting? Oh, I'm gone! I'm gone! Oh my god!
This year saw the continuation of stream bait in pop music. Drake released a very bloated double album to get them streams up, And Nicki Minaj released a song that wasn't even hers on her album to get the stream numbers up and put her to number one. And then she threw a bitch fit on Twitter because Travis Scott got number one anyway. Overall, it seems like the tolerance for shitty trap is coming down. People are getting bored of minimum effort stuff. But emo rap's doing pretty well for itself, with Juice WRLD and Post Malone doing well in the charts this year. And finally, Ariana Grande is very empowered and still rather nice to look at. We can now move on to the meat and taters of this video.
The best albums and EPs of 2018.
This list is vaguely ordered, so it's going to get better as it goes on. First up is the Against All Logic 2012 to 2017 release. This is a side project by Nicholas Jar. It's a collection of gorgeous, groovy, crunchy house tunes. And it is this year's winner of Electronic Dance Album that crosses over with the Indie Kids. Next up is Julia Holter's Aviary, an album dedicated to birds for lovers of birds. Next up is Eve's Tumor, Safe in the Hands of Love, a record that also wins the award for biggest discrepancy between the quality of the album art and the quality of the album. Next up is Tropical Fuckstorm's debut. Do you know how the whole world used to have marsupials and shit, but then they got extinct, except in Australia where they hadn't got any predators, so they kept going? Well, rock music seems to be facing the same evolutionary direction, with Australia being the last hope to see a new one. At this point, you've probably decided whether you love or hate Father John Misty. In fact, the only person in the world who hasn't decided which camp they're in is Josh Tillman himself. Admittedly, he's playing it a little safe on this record, but songs like Mr. Tillman and Please Don't Die were some of my favourite songs of this year. If there was any artist trying to fillet the limp cock of rock music this year, it was Julian Casablancas with his project The Voids. The album was so good that I can almost forgive their substitution of an S with the letter Z. The next album I want to recommend is No Name's Room 25. This female-fronted hip-hop album is phenomenally good, and I think it's going to have a very long tail of influence on people talking about it in the future. So if you really thought that a bitch couldn't rap, check this album out. Sophie, Oil of Every Pearl's Inside. PC Music has kind of a problem with albums, and by that I mean a huge problem with albums. There is like one good PC Music album and it's a compilation album. Until Today. Pony Boy, more like Pony Boy. Cindy Lee, Model Express. If you're the same kind of post-punk nerd that I am, who enjoys swell maps and Chrome, this album is a fucking delight. It's a solo project from one of the dudes from Women. I've enjoyed his previous releases, but he really hit the ball out of the park on this one. US Girls, In a Poem Unlimited. In a year full of tepid takes about women in indie, people seem to have overlooked one of the best albums about being a woman from this year. The musical ideas that are being tapped on this record are so wide-reaching in origin, and it all works. I loved her last record, I love this record, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the future of US Girls is. Alright, we're hitting the real top of the list here, the shit that I really liked. MGMT's Little Dark Age. What can I fucking say about this record? It plays into all of my personal biases and hits every mark perfectly. Congratulations is one of my favourite records of all time, and everyone knows I love goth imagery, so when that first single hit, Little Dark Age, I lost my fucking mind. It finally sounds like they've struck a balance between the pop hooks of Oracular Spectacular and the more cerebral headspacey psychedelic stuff of Congratulations and MGMT. Next up is Rival Console's Persona. This was going to be my number one for a very long time. For most of the year after this came out, it wasn't my number one spot, and for good reason. This is some of the most feeling and human music that I've ever heard. It's somewhat similar in sound to Taiko, but while Taiko sounds like a clean corporate utopia, this record feels transcendental. No other record this year made me feel as much through just musical language alone, and for that, it's my number 2 album of the year. Before I reveal my number 1, I want to do some real quick runners-up. Kurt Vile did another good one. Current 93 did another good one. Justice did another good one. Preoccupations did one that was Could be better. But they've got a great record in them, I'm sure. Compliance was a really fucking good song. Come on, boys, come on! These are the EPs that I liked. Now let's do this. The number one best album of the year. Let's go. Clarence Clarity, Think Peace, and Leave Earth. Now, before you get outraged that I've done the bullshit thing of putting two albums at the number one spot, they're basically the same album, or rather, Leave Earth is a complimentary playlist to go alongside Think Peace. Do you know how with the Beach Boys Smile, there is a finished version, but everyone knows that it's just kind of a version, whereas really there's just a whole bunch of bits thrown out there? Well, Think Peace is kind of the same way, where Leave Earth is the collection of bits. That comparison to Smile can be pushed even further too, because Think Peace often calls back musical ideas you've heard previously, such as lyrical snippets and melodies. In terms of instrumentation, however, it couldn't be further from the Beach Boys. It continues his weird brand of crushed, ugly, distorted funk music. The sounds that you'll hear in any given song are so unpredictable, but underneath all of that is the language of pop music. It reminds me too of Weezer's Pinkerton, which was also a really heavy, crushing, disgusting album aesthetically, but the actual songwriting was all using pop language. There are moments on both Pinkerton and on Think Peace where songs will build to an emotional climax, and then in order to resolve that tension that's been built up, they use a guitar solo, and it kicks ass. And those emotions too come from a very similar place to Pinkerton. If you listen to the lyrics that Clarence is singing on this record, it's a very bitter breakup album, you know? As well as that, he sings about acknowledging his place as a creator, as an artist, and all of the angst that he's dealing with that. And the whole record is just a hugely emotionally powerful record about processing these emotions, these bitter, angry emotions. If you took the Think Peace album on its own without Leave Earth, it'd still be my album of the year. However, the tracks on Leave Earth are some of the best tracks that I can't believe he omitted from the album. The fact that they were non-album singles is crazy. Tracks like Bipolar Rainbows, Telenovela, and Sob Story seem just as important to the album's narrative as any of the cuts off of Think Peace. And just also, by the way, Adam and the Evil is such a fucking good track, oh my god. And I've not even talked about the hooks on this album. There are more hooks than in a fishing supply store. Great technical songwriting only emboldens the emotional lyrics further, which in turn makes my favourite album of the year. And just like Smile and Pinkerton, I think that over time, this album will come to be remembered as one of the all-time greats. And for that reason, it is my number one album of 2018. Thank you.